won't be since I will be sharing. If you can please, if there are any IM window question, I would appreciate you can repeat those to me. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, this week I don't have a presentation. Our topic of discussion, as you know, is around Azure Functions and especially PowerShell. So basically, we're going to talk about Azure Functions PowerShell support, which is just gone into public preview. So we'll talk about it, what is different. I mean, why there is, why we have to have a session about it, or why it is so important. So as usual, we are going to start with some quick Azure updates. So this is, by the way, folks, please remember Azure update links for all the updates available, Azure blog links, these two bookmark those. So first of all is Azure Log Analytics, which is available in publicly available or generally available in more regions. And that's good for the customer because now they can, if they are using that service, they can store the data closer to where those services are, so don't have to pay egress costs. Okay, so that's a good thing. Second one is Azure Application Gateway V2 and Web Application Firewall V2 are now GA. It has some enhanced capabilities like header rewrite, zone redundancy, so it now supports you can deploy it across zones. Of course, auto scaling is there and static IP. So these are some of the things that are available as a part of it. And just know that they also announced its integration with Key Vault. So instead of like copying your certificate to Gateway, now you can put it in a Key Vault and connect it to the gateway so it can get the cert. That is currently in public preview, so you can only do it, I think, through PowerShell or CLI. The portal support is not there yet, but it's coming. So that's something um, that you may want to be aware of. I want to talk about two events. I know the build is happening on 6, so tune in to its live stream and especially to the keynote. I'm really excited about what new announcement will come from the keynote. One is Azure Data Days. So that is an event that is happening across the South Central in Texas, in Houston, St. Louis, and in Dallas. So this is, I think it's 29th. Correct me if I'm wrong, John. It's 29th in Dallas. Okay.
It's the 20th.
20th. Okay,
Yep.
20th. Dev Data Days is on 20th. And the Dev Days, that's a developer focused event that is also happening in 3 cities. And um, these are the latest one, Houston, Dallas, and St. Louis. So basically, and these are the previous city where it happened before. So please, if you are in those cities, join. It's a 1-day event. So, okay, any questions? Okay, folks, with that, we are going to move on to our topic of discussion, and which is Azure Functions PowerShell support. So as you know, that Azure Functions is a part of Microsoft Serverless offering. Basically, you write a piece of code which you can run on um, as a function, and it can respond to an event, like it can be a recurring call or some messages arriving in a queue or some event grid event, and then that code execute. You don't pay for any server, you just pay for your code's execution. It has support for C Sharp. It has it has support for Java, and now it has support for PowerShell in public preview. And why it is a big deal? The reason it is a big deal because a number of administrators who are operations team are very familiar with PowerShell. So what they do is they write script to automate certain tasks like cleaning up um, you know a folder or creating resources when a user joins in the team, or for example cleaning up the database, redundant or something, cleaning up the database every night, or removing the backup redundant backup files, things like that. All of these they were doing through PowerShell. Now what they can do is they can bring that same expertise into um, into Azure Function, and instead of kind of using those scripts, kind of running it through some type of a cron job or something, they can use event-driven way through Azure Function to run those the same scripts and run uh, the same logic. So basically, we are just kind of what our goal is in Microsoft to meet our user where they are. So instead of asking them to learn C# or Java, we are saying, PowerShell. So we are going to bring Azure Functions to you. So that's how they're able to do it. So let's quickly start with how we will create, and I just want to quickly show, if you haven't played with Azure Function for a while, just keep in mind that now Azure Functions um, only support one language for the full function app. So if you create a function app, you have to define what is your runtime stack. It can be .NET, JavaScript, or Java, and PowerShell is in a preview. So you have to decide that. You just pick the stack, and then you define a name for your function app. And with that, you are, with that you create it, and it will create your function app. I already have a function app created, so I want to show you the function app first, and then show some interesting things about that function app. So let's quickly go into my function app that I have created. And this is the function app, very appropriately named NZPS demo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new function in that function app, and I'm going to just create through HTTP trigger. I'm going to name it APL demo, and that's pretty much it. And that's going to create the function itself. Give it a second. So if I let's say I'm going to open the logs, and I'm going to run this function, and it's going to show me this function was programmatically executed, and it's going to show me the output in a second. So once we see that, we will go behind the scene to take a look. Hello Azure. So it has printed. This is the output, and as you can see, this the execution function. Nothing exciting. As you can see here, this is all boilerplate PowerShell code. I don't claim to be a PowerShell expert or don't play it on TV. This is basically some, and I'm sure if there are any PowerShell experts online, they may have ideas how to make it more useful. But the goal was just to show how you can run PowerShell function. So I want to show you one interesting thing. So let's open the console, and okay, let's go in here, and let's do a directory. So this is the function .json, the JSON file that defines the um, kind of a configuration about that function. Run.ps1 is actually your PowerShell file, and by the way, we are hosting it through a custom host. So you can run it in the cloud as well as on-prem. But I want to show you something here. dir. Okay, so there are two files which are interesting. One is, let's do So this file, let me expand it. Let's take a look at this file. If you can see it, it is basically doing the managed identity. So if your function app has a managed identity, it's going to use and take this identity and use it. And this will run every time your function app start, not every time your function app executes. So if you have changed something with the managed identity, it's a good idea to stop it and restart it. Because if your function app is already running, it will continue to run the same identity. So it's a good idea just to make sure, stop it and restart it. So this is something very important to keep in mind in regards to um, the the managed identity. So this is a profile file which will run every time when your function app start up. Okay, so um, basically you can put some other code there, any code that you need to run before your any of your PowerShell script starts, function starts. So that's something to keep in mind. Second thing is there's another file called requirements dot. So let's check that out as well. Okay, so right now, I mean, you can put dependency here. Right now, it only have dependency on one module, which is Azure module. If you want other modules there, you can put that dependency here in the requirements.psd1. Okay, so that's kind of so I mean the people who are more familiar with PowerShell, I mean they may be thinking of some other ideas and doing things. So that's something. So that's kind of a place to their the whole goal is of Azure Functions PowerShell support to play to their strength to make sure that they can take advantage of their existing um, capability, knowledge and use Azure PowerShell function. So now let's come back to have a more concrete function that we have here um, that is doing something kind of more useful. So I'm just gonna show you this function. Let me just minimize it. Let me. Okay, that's fine. So here is the um, here is the function code. What this function is doing, I am passing in a username and their object ID. And this function, so for example, it can be a user joining a team and I got some information, or um, the user is kind of joining a certain POC or something. So a user ID and a object ID comes in. And what I do is I basically go in, create a storage account for that user because they are doing a POC for which they will need storage account. So each user who is created is getting a new storage account. So here is the code to create the storage account. I'm creating the storage account and then I am assigning that user as a contributor to that storage account. The thing is, this is not kind of very useful, but it just gives you ideas what you can do with Azure PowerShell, Azure Functions with PowerShell support. So basically, you can have a pretty complex things where you can create resources and do all those things based on certain events that are taking place. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So as we know that there is another service that Azure provide in the serverless, which is Azure Logic Apps, and you can call Azure functions from that Logic app. So in this case, I'm not gonna call it directly from from um, from a web browser. I'm just gonna use Logic app to call it. But so let's go into the Logic app and see how we are setting this function up. So this is basically, let me show you how the Logic app is. So this Logic app, some it's reading a queue. A message comes in into a queue and which has the name of the user. What I do is I call get user API, passing in the name of the user, which is in the content field of that message. I get from that, I get the object ID. And then here is a JSON where I am passing the name, user principal name, and object, which is the object ID, uh, which I have obtained from the previous step to this function. So I am doing three things once again. Reading a message from the queue. So basically, this is an event-driven logic app, as they all are, and this is driven through a service bus message, queue message. Message comes in. I pick up that message. The message has the name of the user. In that, I get the name. I try to basically I get the ID of the user, which is the object ID. So I'm just doing a get user to get all the data, and then I'm using the principal name, which is the email address, and then the ID that I have to pass it to all to the next function. So that's how this thing works. So let's do this. Let's use this MSMQ app, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna pass this name. I have, so by the way, this is a user in my Azure Active Directory. Okay, I have my own instance of Azure AD where I have set it up, and that's where this user exists. So I'm just passing it. Think of it a scenario where this user has joined a POC or team or a developer, and he needs to do some testing, and we need to create some resources. So instead of manually doing some resources or running a script, I'm making it event driven where as soon as they join the team, a message is sent, and that I'm just checking on that message, and then I'm creating that particular resource or resources, in this case, just a storage account for that particular user. So basically, a message has been sent. Let's go into our Azure logic app. So let's take a look. Let's see what's happening. So as you can see, the first one, a message has arrived. I mean, this message has the uh, name of the user. The second one, and that's the beauty of the logic app as well, you can see what is the input and what is the output. So this is the input to the logic app. And the third part is still executing. So basically, oh, it just finished executing. So let's take a look. So this is what's happened. It has it has run, returned 200, and it has executed, and the storage account name that it has created, it is APL5HY. So let's go in to that particular resource group. So I'm gonna go into this particular, so this is my resource group. As you can see, I'm playing with it. So there are so many resource storage account, and the account that it has created is, one more time, I forgot what was the account name. Come on. APL5H. So APL5H. So this is the storage account. So it has created that storage account, and let's check the permission on that particular storage account. So if we go to access control and we go to role assignments, so it has assigned Dak Prescott as a contributor to this role. So basically, the whole thing that we did, we just called PowerShell and uh, use that to do all of it. I mean, you can have done it with C# as well, I'm sure, and JavaScript. But the key important point is that ops teams which have existing experience with PowerShell, they can bring that experience to Azure Function to create, to automate, and to kind of make those tasks that they do event driven. So that's kind of an open door to a new set of users who may not have been taking advantage of Azure Functions so far. Any questions? Okay. Are there any questions? Let me just see if there are any questions in that IAM window. Just okay. So there are no questions. Okay. So if there are no questions, I think I'm gonna give everybody their 6-7 minutes back, and hope to see everybody next week for another session of Azure Power Lunch. And once again, there is no there is no deck for today. I will upload the session in our YouTube channel, and please, join us next week for another session of Azure Power Lunch. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, thanks.